Time and time again, I come across forum posts asking others about how hard it is to change a clutch. Like, how long does it take? What tools do I need? What parts do I need? And can novice mechanics really do it in their own garage? I've never actually changed a clutch before either, so I've always been curious about this as well. Changing a clutch is intimidating to a novice mechanic. There's no doubt about that. It involves heavy lifting, specialized tools, a lot of time investment, and the stakes are quite high. If you do it wrong, you might end up with a pile of parts rather than a car that used to move before you tore into it. And for these reasons, changing a clutch is usually outside the comfort zone of most budding auto mechanics. But the rewards are really high too. Aside from probably over $1,000 saved, you get an awesome sense of accomplishment, a better understanding of how it all works, and trust me, you'll feel a closer emotional connection to your machine after you're done. So I decided to make a video showing you all what it was like for 4 dudes to change a clutch for the very first time, and if you're considering doing this as well, I hope that by end of the video, we can convince you that with a little bit of help from your friends and a little bit of research, you can do it yourself too. We're working on a front-wheel drive V6 3000 GT. And the details of how to change a clutch may vary a bit from car to car, but especially if you have a front-wheel drive car, I imagine the process will be pretty similar. So sit back and relax, and let us walk you through how we did it.
Alright, let's actually document what we're doing.
Okay.
Guess this may turn into a nightmare. If we forget to reconnect something that we can't get to. Alright, so air.
I'm a pretty meticulous person, but I'm being even more careful with this job. I'm writing down everything that we're doing, no matter how minor, so that we can retrace our steps when we're assembling this back together. You should try to do the same. Even better, strap a GoPro to your head so that you can always refer back to the footage if you find yourself lost.
Did you remove the box too?
Yeah, we might as well.
We have a front-wheel drive V6 engine that is positioned sideways. This means that our transmission is at the passenger side of the car, so we're removing everything that is on top of the transmission, starting with the air hose and the air filter box. With the air hose and filter box removed, we can start to see the transmission underneath. The battery will also need to be disconnected and removed.
Battery?
Yep.
Always remove the negative connection first, then the positive connection.
Wow, that looks fun. I'm gonna try to remove this battery tray.
Yeah.
Full of acid.
This car has more battery acid powder than I've ever seen in my life combined. What you see on top of the tray isn't even half of it. There's thick piles of the stuff underneath.
Another one?
Oh my god, I've never seen such a big mountain.
I'll take a picture of this because this is definitely your cocaine that you're talking about.
Very dirty crack. Is there anything under here? Did the bolt just disintegrate?
By the way, this is a $700 car that my friends and I picked up a few months ago to enter the 24 Hours of Lemons race. If you like this content, there's a whole video series on us working on this car, so be sure to check that out.
What is it? Oh, I found it. There's another bolt that was hidden under. That's circular.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bolt. Is it from underneath then? That would be stupid.
After literally playing battery acid archaeology, we managed to get the tray out of the car as well.
Oh my god, I've never seen anything like this. Where do I dump this?
In a bag? Do you want to use this?
Yeah.
The windshield fluid reservoir, which was mostly held onto the battery tray, is also coming out. This will probably stay out since we really have no need for this anymore, and we already cut the lines trying to get the hood removed from a previous episode.
Alright. So this is the motor mount that's holding up the transmission. So this is the shifter linkage.
Yep.
What's this?
It's the return. You always have two.
Oh, okay.
Yep. There's a cotter pin right here, holding these two linkages in. What we could do is we could just remove the two lines out.
I think you're right.
With the bracket, and then flip it out of the way.
Want to get that bracket?
These two cables are hooked up to the shifter in the cabin, and they'll need to be disconnected from the transmission. Cotter pins are used to keep them in place, and don't lose the rubber spacers that might fall out.
Where did this come from? There's like a random washer that fell out. Oh, it's from here, yeah.
Once the bracket is also loosened, you can bend both of these cables back to keep them out of the way.
I think I use these for aquarium, but yeah, can't be used for that anymore.
We're draining the coolant from the engine because we'll need to disconnect the lower radiator hose to get it also out of the way. And we're happy to see clear-ish coolant because we're sick of seeing orange rust stains on the floor.
Yeah, it's just water. And it's actually clear this time. Might be the first time it was clear.
How many times have you drained it?
Like over probably a dozen times. Do we feel like we need to remove this hose?
No.
No? Just that one?
Yeah.
Let's bring it out and see.
While the coolant is draining, we're checking out the new parts that Greg ordered for us. Looks like we have a new slave cylinder, which will be much easier to replace once the transmission is totally free from the car, and a new master cylinder, which I doubt will actually take the time to install it since the current one is working just fine. While we were out getting lunch, we also picked up this cheap transmission jack from Harbor Freight that ended up being really useful, especially since I didn't have a jack on hand. Transmission jacks are much more stable than a jack, and has straps to raise or lower the jack securely without it falling on the concrete floor, or even worse, your toes or fingers.
Oh really?
Yeah, so the motor mount is actually on the transmission on this side.
Oh really?
So the transmission is holding the engine in, and the motor mount is actually connected to the transmission, so we need to take that motor mount out.
Oh, shit,
which means that the engine is going to be dangling
So
on one
it'll be
side.
like just
yeah.
okay.
So that is completely wrong. I didn't know that there were 3 other motor mounts that held up the engine really pretty securely. So even with this one transmission mount off, the engine really shouldn't budge. But I failed to realize that, and we proceeded to use an engine hoist to keep the engine up, in fears that the engine was literally going to droop down towards the floor.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Yeah.
What a massive waste of time this was. After taking off the lower coolant hose and bending it out of the way, try to clear as many of the wiring harnesses and plugs you can away from the transmission.
Hey man, what is this connected to?
Throttle body?
Okay, I'm gonna remove this because when I pull this
go for
up,
it.
this is the one that's keeping everything down.
Yeah. Are you guys unplugging something?
Yeah.
Before tackling the motor mount, we need to make sure that everything is disconnected from the transmission, and that includes various plugs, harness brackets, and clutch fluid lines. It's really not that difficult, but to avoid a headache later, make sure you carefully note where everything goes.
So the slave is mounted directly to the bell housing. The hard line is also connected from the slave to the transmission box.
The slave cylinder will remain attached to the bell housing of the transmission, but the clutch fluid line will need to be disconnected from it.
Might be our best.
Rubber clutch line / bracket.
Shim. Hard line to clutch line.
Alright, so get underneath the car and start disconnecting stuff. Is everything on the top done? Alright, let me get underneath and see what we're dealing with. There's one bracket and... oh, we have to remove the starter. It looks pretty simple.
The starter will need to be removed, and I know you can't see much right now, but it's really not that hard. It was just 2 or 3 bolts that needed to be loosened, and as long as you remember where all the connections and grounds go, it's as simple as pulling it out and resting it somewhere so you can reattach it later.
Shifter cable linkage.
So south and
So between motor
the
mount.
motor mount.
Can we pull the starter up through here? Yep. Alright.
Oh, holy crap.
We actually might need to use a 2x4 because this is going to catch on here.
I thought you were moving that.
Aren't you getting rid of the cross member first? It's not supporting anything.
It's not?
Is it not?
Oh, I guess it's not. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because
The motor mount's holding it from the top.
Yeah.
Because you're getting rid of this, right?
Yep.
The crossmember that sits beneath the transmission will need to be removed so it won't get in the way when you drop the transmission out of the car. I first thought it was supporting the transmission up, but it's not a transmission mount. You can just unbolt it and it will drop right out.
Oh, dude, nice.
You guys got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to remember all those bolt spots.
Also, they're all different lengths.
Yeah.
Dude, nicely done, man. I was just gonna wrench until like something broke.
I'm sure we would have gotten one bolt broken.
Probably.
Oh, nice.
Hey.
Alright, so trans jack and release the motor mount.
Yeah.
Should we try to take out the bell housing bolts first?
That's basic. Okay, so there's 4 here. 1, 2, 3, 4.
4, and then probably another 4 at
Wait,
the
no,
bottom.
this-
We don't have to take those mounts
Locating all the bell housing
No.
bolts, which basically connect the transmission to the engine itself, can be
Easy
a bit
peasy,
difficult,
lemon
but it just
squeezy.
takes a little bit of investigation and reading the FSM if needed.
God, this thing is so heavy.
The impact?
Yeah. We could have used a new cardboard box. This thing is just like crunchy.
It's not like we're made of cardboard boxes here, man.
Have you seen this landing though?
Yeah.
Oh, that seems close. Yeah, see, the U-joint can't be facing down because I can't.
Click it in.
Yeah, can you hold it like straight like this?
If you're wondering if this is something you can tackle on your own,
Got it.
the answer is probably, but be very careful. Having at least one extra set of eyes and hands helping you out is just enormously helpful in doing this. And even if I were to do this again, even with all the right tools and experience this time, I would not attempt to do this alone. I'm just happy to be working together with these guys on this, not sweating and getting frustrated all on my own.
So, race day, we're not really gonna get a chance to replace the clutch then.
There's no way we're doing this on race day.
Well, I guess
If
it's
it
good that we're
goes.
doing it now, then.
Why not?
Are you serious? Do you think you could like?
It goes so much faster the second time.
Right, but the car's gonna be hot.
It's
And
gonna
you're
be
gonna have
hot.
your hand up in
Yeah,
the
it'll be
engine.
hot for the first
It's gonna be-
hour that we stop. Then the second hour we'll do the clutch.
Yeah, but if it's overnight, we could totally do this.
You just
If
splash
you-
like a couple bottles of water on the engine.
Do
help
they,
it
like-
cool down.
No, because it's not 24 hours straight. You got day 1 and day 2, so you have
Yeah.
all night to work on it.
Yeah, if it happens day one, we could do it before and get time.
What are we using as lifts? Do you know?
Oh my gosh, that was the worst one yet.
All the rest of them are pretty exposed, right?
Yeah, I think that's it for the bottom.
Okay. Wait, there's only 2?
No, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 1, 2,
There's 2 on that side, 2 on this side.
3, 4.
And the ground I already took out.
Okay. Yeah. All right, let's put the trans jack under it.
With all the bell housing bolts out, it's time to place the transmission jack underneath the transmission. It's the last step before we can disconnect the transmission from the mount.
Then the apparently has a thing for blue cars that this stuff.
Okay, so theoretically, the bell housing should be loose now.
Wait, there was one more. There was definitely 5. At least 5.
It might be a good idea to label where the different length bell housing bolts go. Don't toss them all in a bag like we did. Also, absolutely make sure that you remove all of the bell housing bolts before you attempt to drop the transmission. That's a very easy way to turn this into a nightmare.
That's right. Yep. Did you guys see it move? I saw it rotate.
Good? Yep.
Removing the trans mount, or the motor mount, whatever it's called, is pretty straightforward. Just remove everything and replace the rubber pieces if you want to. Ours look pretty okay.
Well, it should.
No, it's still connected somewhere.
You think it's connected somewhere?
Well, no, I think it's just the rubber bushings on the other motor mounts.
You want me to lower the trans jack and
just a little bit?
Alright, so pry bar.
So you need to pull it out, you mean?
We need to pull it
Towards me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think you can do that with your arm strength, dude.
What do you want this one?
Alright, where can I lever? Oh, it is coming apart.
Yeah.
So everything is disconnected, and the only thing that's left to do is to separate the transmission from the engine. But what's starting now is hours of battling with this really late at night that leaves everyone tired and frustrated. It just would not separate. We tried wiggling, pulling, levering, and even kicking. Nothing would work. I honestly thought that we might be ruining the transmission or bending something, which would negate everything that we've done so far, and even worse, make the car stationary for probably weeks. But finally, after 2 hours, we found the right size pry bar and the perfect levering position, and bam, it came apart almost too easily, like it was just taunting us.
We ended up spending.
Got it.
Yeah. It's out.
We have to lower it. Can you lower the jack? You got it. Keep going.
Okay, it's uneven. Oh, it's sliding. Is that still going?
Hey, we have to remove this cover. This plastic cover right here, it's pushing up against this.
Right.
Slide it towards you if you can, the whole thing. You got it. Lower it. Got it.
You slide it that way.
Major victory.
Slide it out. Oh, nice. Oh, dude, it looks so.
The transmission is finally free from the car, and I'm just over the moon at this point. This wasn't the most complicated thing that I've done, but it does feel like I've earned some sort of a home mechanics merit badge. A badge of distinction for those who have removed the transmission from a car without cutting, breaking, or generally just taking shortcuts. Even though we're not even half done with this job, I'm just all smiles from here.
Na 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 na.
Alright, now we just put the new clutch in and we're done, right?
Mm-hmm. Just slap it back on. Do it with my eyes closed. Dude, I've never taken out a transmission before. It was a huge win. I can't. This is a big moment for me. I've always wanted to do this.
And there's the final list. With a detailed list and an even more detailed video footage, putting this back together should be a piece of cake, right? So in the next episode, we'll go through the installation of the new clutch, the pressure plate, and the general reassembly of this whole deal. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Alright, let's take a look.